This time of year in the fall, when the migratory birds are leaving, we often sort of forget about where they're going and how they spend the winter. And they really are birds of two worlds. So the world that we see them in here is totally different than their world in the tropics. And unless we've had a chance to go down there and catch up with them after their journey, it's hard to appreciate what kind of world they face down there. And for birds that, like the wood thrush, that migrate to Central America, mostly in Honduras and Nicaragua, seems to be the core wintering area. That area has undergone massive deforestation in the last 20 or 30 years. Over half the forest is being cut down in just a few decades. And so for us to have wood thrush in the long run, to keep numbers stable, we need to protect the wintering habitat. And we're not doing a good job of that right now. And so what's happening to the wood thrush? Half of them have disappeared in the last 40 years. You look at the breeding bird survey, the numbers just go down and down. And for a bird like the wood thrush, when the forest is being cut down all around it, in many cases, it's the shade coffee plantations, which are the last places left for them to have a healthy winter and be able to survive and have a spring migration and come back here and breed. Well, how can we protect this habitat? Well, of course, we can support groups that buy tropical forest and partner with conservation groups that protect it forever, national parks, etc. But that's not enough. I mean, there aren't that many places left that aren't already cut down, And so that's where shade coffee comes in. It's almost too bad that this kind of coffee became known as shade grown, because there's different kinds of shade, right? So if you go out on, if you have your typical suburban lawn and you have a tree in your yard and it's a hot day, if you go sit under that one tree, yeah, you're in the shade and it's a little cooler. But that's not a forest, right? A single tree on your lawn is not a forest. So really, I think a better name for it would be forest coffee. It's actually, because that reflects the habitat that it's grown in. And coffee is a big, big business, right? Billions of dollars. And so people who want to sell their product in sort of sound green will for sure call their coffee shade coffee. But the consumer doesn't know whether it's the single tree on a lawn kind of version of shade or whether it's actual real shade coffee grown in a forest. And I think the confusion is deliberate in some circles. I mean, folks who aren't producing real shade-grown coffee from forests would perhaps rather not everyone know about that. And so some of the confusion, I think, is intentional because people want to sell their coffee, right? And I'm not in the coffee business. I don't sell coffee. I do birds. But I can see the confusion on people's faces when I give talks and I get questions at the end of my talks. About free trade versus organic versus shade, and here I buy this kind of coffee. Is it really shade grown? There's one bird-friendly certification. It's through the Smithsonian Institution. It's third party, scientifically verified. It's been around for years. It is the gold standard. It's actual forest-grown coffee. And there's other kinds of certifications for coffee that don't have the same high standards. Makes it easier to get certified, but again, it's not as good for the birds because it's not as forest-like habitat. And so for people who really love birds and are passionate about them, bird-friendly certification is the only one that you should be looking for and buying.